Alrighty, so in this video I'm going to show you about the motion study. And if you take a look at the status bar down here in the bottom, tells a question, by the way, you have this tab over here. You have a couple different tabs. We're always in the model tab, but this one you probably haven't seen, or maybe you've looked at it briefly, but it gives you a motion study. So it's a time-based study down here where at certain intervals of time that you can set, you could have the model do different things. You could have it change colors, you could have it rotate, you could actually have it move. I mean, that's the idea of the motion study. So, I mean, it's real simple. All you have to do is take your cursor over here, take this timeline bar, and kind of move that into a different location, and then do something different there. So if we were to take this time bar and maybe move it to 2 seconds, nothing changes. But conceivably, we could take our wheel and maybe make that go an eighth of a turn. Now you'll notice down here that the Sarrus Wheel is turned. There's a green bar in here, which means we have motion associated with that. And we also have some 8s in here too that might be affected. So everything in our feature manager tree is featured down here in the motion study too. Okay, so that changes here at 2 seconds. We're going to go ahead and move this to 4 seconds and maybe move that a little bit more. Maybe instead of an eighth of a turn, let's go ahead and do 3/8 of a turn and see what that does. And maybe at 6 seconds, let's go ahead and do some more. Let's go ahead and do like maybe almost 3/4 of an inch. And oh, look at that. It's beginning to fall apart. But don't worry. It's not going to fully resolve itself until we press this button over here, which is going to be calculate. So, some of the hinges are coming apart and our push rod's coming apart. But that's okay. We're going to go ahead and fix that later. So now we're going to wheel this over. As long as the wheel doesn't come apart, the wheel is going to be the focus of our study right here. The wheel is going to stay the same. So that's what we have at 6 seconds. We're going to move this to 8 seconds. You can see it's partially resolving itself and showing all the components that are moving. And then the primary driving component over here is a dark green line. So at 8 seconds, let's go ahead and go maybe a little bit further over here. Then 10 seconds. Let's go ahead and slow the wheel down and kind of make it really slow when we finally get to the back to the beginning here at the top. So we're going to make our increments every time we turn this thing just a little bit slower until it kind of comes to a screeching halt when it gets to the top. So here we are at 16 seconds. We're slowly moving this around. A little bit slower, smaller increments as we go. And then we'll try to conclude this by about 20 seconds. We'll get that up to the top. So 20 seconds, we'll put that at the top where it started from the very beginning. And now we're ready to go. So let's do this. Now we're going to go ahead and calculate it. So it's going to go back to the beginning. Remember, it slowed at first. Then it begins to speed up there a bit. And when it gets towards the top, it begins to slow down a little bit as it goes over the top. And there you have it. Now it's going to get real slow. Sorry about that. That might be painfully slow. But there's something we could do about that too. If you want to go ahead and speed that up a little bit, we can do that too. So now it's going to go ahead and go back to the beginning. It's just going to repeat itself over and over again. So our playback mode, we can do a couple different things in here. We can do a playback mode of normal. We could have it go into loop, or it's going to start from the beginning, go to the end, and go back to the loop beginning again. Or we could do reciprocate. So let's do reciprocate. So when it gets out to the end, now it's going to go backwards. Or we could just do a one-time shot, just playback mode, normal, just goes from the beginning to the end. Lots and lots of different options in here. So if we go to stop, anytime you make a change in here, you're going to have to recalculate that. So let's do this. Let's take maybe these items that are towards the end are a little bit slow. Let's go ahead and compress that. All you have to do is move some of these keys around a little bit. We're going to compress these a little bit. And then we're going to go ahead and recalculate it. So you notice that the bar over here, everything in this side over here is still green. But this side, when we started making these changes from 10 seconds up to 20 seconds, now have those hash marks in it. And we're going to have to recalculate that. Not going to recalculate it all the way back to the beginning. But, yeah, it's going to go from that 10-second mark all the way back to the beginning because we're in the middle of reciprocate. So it's going to start again. It's going to recalculate this area that's gray in here from 10 seconds up to 20 seconds. Now you can see what that's going to do. So we're spreading that out a little bit, kind of speeding it up towards the end, then it gets real slow. But now it's going to have to speed up again when it gets up to the top. So now it's going to go backwards. And it's got that resolved. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. If we go to stop, take this slider over here and put that back to the beginning, we can do more stuff, and we'll cover that here in just a moment. Okay, so I'm going to show you some more items in here. But before we get started, I just want to let you know that this is just a real quick tour of the motion study. And for my students, for your final design project, if you want to do this, add more elements in here, you're welcome to do that. I would welcome you to explore that. But I'm just going to show the basics in this film, kind of show you how to get started, show you about some of the keys, and then kind of give you a brief tour of all the different options that we have in here, including making a video, like a EVI video out of this when you're all done. You could add motors in here, a spring, a cam, and some other elements in here too as you as you go through this. And right now, by default, we're in animation, but you can do basic motion too, which is a little bit more engineering related. But again, not in this video. Just going to show you the basics. So let's do this. Let's take our rollback bar, and not a rollback bar, but our slider over here, and let's go to the top of our feature manager tree. Here's something else you might want to explore, and that is lights. You can take lights and actually turn those on and off if you want to do that as an option. And that's pretty much the same with all these elements in here. In fact, if we scroll down here and take a look at all the different parts that we have in here, the primary part that got turned over here is the dark green line, but elements that were affected by it are going to be these bracketed yellow lines, bracketed by a green line in the top and the bottom. And these are keys in here too. As you saw, we can move these keys around. We can even delete these keys too if we want to do that, and I'll show you that when we get to the lights. Mates down here. We could take mates and turn on and off mates. We could suppress them and unsuppress them. And that'll allow like a part that might, as you're going through your motion study, might be on its own regarding motion. It might go fly away on you. But when you take that mate and put it right back again, when you suppress it or unsuppress it, it'll come right back. So some of the results that you might get by making these changes in here, you're just going to have to play around with it and see actually what works for you and your model. Let's try this. Let's take some lights and actually turn those off. So let's take a rollback bar, or not a rollback bar, but our timeline bar in here. Let's take that back to the beginning. At the beginning, we have our ambient light that's on. So let's say like maybe at 2 seconds, we're going to take that ambient light and we're going to turn that off. So we're going to make that off. And what it does is go back to the top of the tree. It creates a transition between where it's going to be on. If you take that rollback bar and go over here, it's on. When we get to that key over here, bang, it becomes off. And the last state it's in, it remains in that state. So there it's off. Now let's say at this point, at 4 seconds, we want to turn that thing back on again. So I don't know why it's jumping me all the way down there. Maybe we need to take our mates folder and actually suppress that or condense that a little bit. So now let's take a look at that. So at 4 seconds on, it's going to be on. Between 2 and 4 seconds, it should be off. So if we were to take that timeline bar and move that over here, after we go over that key, it's off just briefly, then it comes back on again. But it's going to be a transition. So let's take a look at that. Let's go ahead and calculate that. Ambient light is slowly turning off, and it turns off there just briefly, and it's back on again, and its last state is on, so it's going to stay on. So if we were to take that timeline bar and move that over here, maybe at 6 seconds, and again turn that off, and now it's going to stay off. So from that point on, from 6 seconds on through, it's going to stay off. Now say we want to condense these again. We can take these diamonds, these keys, and move these around a little bit so we can do the on and off. Actually, they're really quick, and see what that looks like. Don't necessarily have to calculate this all the time. When you don't have those hash lines in the top, you don't necessarily have to calculate. You just go to the play button if you want to do that. So those are lights. And we're going to cover some more items here in just a moment. Okay, let me show you a few more things. I'm going to go ahead and give you a tour of what's up here and what you can expect out of some of these items. But let's go ahead and take like maybe our base plate at a certain place in here. If we were to take our vertical timeline in here, maybe move that around, perhaps we want to make that base plate maybe transparent or maybe off. We want to make sure that it's hiding at a certain location in here, like maybe between 6 and then back on again, like maybe 8. And we can do that too. So if we go to 6, what we want to do is we want to take that base plate, we're going to right click that, and we're going to tell it to hide. So 6 is going to be hidden. 8 is going to be hidden. So we're going to make sure we're going to put a key in there. So let's go ahead and put a key at that location. So we're going to right click in there. We're going to go ahead and place a key. And then over here at 10, let's go ahead and make that, let's put that back again. So we're going to go ahead and make it show at that point. So now if we go back to the beginning, we're going to have to calculate this because it's got hash marks on it. Let's go to calculate. Let's It's going to start from the beginning. So now it's going to get transition from being on to off at that location. So as we're looking at the bottom of this, we're going to see that. And now we're going to see it come back to life there, and it's going to stay back to life. It's going to stay showing from 10 seconds on out. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the options over here on the very top. Let's go to stop. Let's take our slider and move that over here to the left-hand side. And let's start from the top up here. Right now we're just in basic animation. If you just start a motion study in here, it's going to default to that. But if you go to basic motion in here, that's going to take in consideration some other things, like the effects of motors over here, the spring, gravity, and some other elements in here too, if you want to choose that. Of course, if we move from the left to the right, we have our calculate button. We know about that. If you don't see hash marks up here, you don't have to calculate it. But if you do, you're going to have to calculate that. Otherwise, you can just play. Play from the start or just play. You can do the stop button if it's running. And there's a slider over here gives you the opportunity to go to different portions of that. You could also take your vertical timeline in here and actually move that around to kind of emulate motion in there too, as the animation might work its way out. You can put in some values in here if you want to make it go 5 times faster. You could do that when you go ahead and play, so it goes really fast. So there's an opportunity for a different amount of time. You can go down to a tenth of the value that we had before. And you can vary the values in there too. So we know these playback modes. Regular playback mode goes from the beginning to the end and then stops. Playback mode will go in a loop, so it goes from the beginning to the end and backs up again and starts all over again. And the reciprocate goes backwards and then forwards and then backwards again. You can go ahead and save your animation if you want to do that. So if you click on that, it gives you an opportunity to save that in a location if you're choosing. Bunch of different options in here. Typically it's a Microsoft AVI file, but you can do a series of bitmaps if you want to do that, and TGA files in here too. You can select your image size if you want to do that. But what's really going to be helpful in here is to use a camera. If you have a camera set up, go ahead and use that camera. That helps you control that a little bit better. And then you can frames output, a lot of different numbers in here. And if you go to the save button in here, it gives you even more options in here too. So the compressor could be a Microsoft Video 1, or you use one of the Intel codecs, and some of the other ones in here too. Again, with these options in here, and you could make variations on some of these options in here, you're just going to have to play around with that and get something that actually works well for you. So you can save that. Animation Wizard gives you the opportunity to open up this dialog box. If you have an exploded view, and the collapse would be part of that, it'll help you with that, and actually you can animate that, save that as an AVI file if you like. And some other options in here too, if you actually put that into your assembly already. You know, the capacity to create kind of an animation wizard there. And then from there, once it starts, and you can go ahead and make modifications to your timeline in here if you want to do that. Then if you actually had something in here selected, you can actually add keys in there. So you can add or update a key in that at a specific time at that location. You could do that too, simply by clicking on that. And then you have your motors. You have your motor, you have a spring, you have a cam, you have the effects of gravity. So if something is coming off at the end of like a ramp, like a ball, it would fall off that ramp, and it would gravity would take over at that point, and it would actually fall to the next surface it runs into, or maybe into infinity, perhaps. Who knows? And you have some options in here too. And you can actually change some of these items in here too. So we're going to go to red X up here. And then the last thing down here are going to be filters. So you can have no filters, which is what we have right now. Filters, just items that are going to be animated. So these are anything with the bars on them. And you'll notice that there's some items down here that don't have bars. Some things are not going to get affected. The wheel mount's not going to move. The base plate's not going to move. So we're going to see no motion there. And we have a couple pins in here which are going to be locked in rotation in regard to the concentric mate that we have in there, so those aren't going to be there. So if we actually do the items that are going to be moving, kind of gets rid of some of those things that we have in there that don't need to be shown. And we get filter that even further by going to filter the driving element. So really the only driving element that we have in here is going to be the wheel. Everything else is going to be impacted by that wheel, or maybe not at all. Now we could actually select some things to filter. So if we go back to like no filters in here, maybe select our directionals, like maybe 3 of those directional lights, and just filter those. It kind of shows you what those lights are. And then, of course, if you don't like the filter in there, if you want to get rid of that, if you're done with it, go to no filter, and that'll put that in place. So A lot of options. If you have an assembly with a lot of components that move, and maybe components that move independently of each other, this would be helpful. We just have one motion in here, and that's driven by this wheel in here, or maybe one of these hinge plates. If you wanted to move one of those and have that actually drive the wheel, we could do that. But if you have a complicated assembly with a lot of different elements in there that move and move independently, this is where a motion study is really going to become helpful. So we did a lot of the visualization stuff in here, but when it comes to actual motion, put that on your own final design project, your own project, and you can apply a lot of these steps that you see here towards those items in your own design.